A girl lay in bed, terrified of the morning. She wished she could spend the whole day dreaming because reality was too cruel. Her name is Asahina Wakaba. As dawn broke, sadness overwhelmed her. She went into the bathroom and splashed water on her face. Look in the mirror. She placed her hand on the glass, whispering about her haggard appearance. He believed he couldn't face his family in this state. The scene shifts to breakfast at home. Wakaba, in her uniform. She greeted everyone with a radiant smile. Her father put down the newspaper and replied in a warm voice, noticing how cheerful his daughter looked today. Her mother chimed in, saying that everyone feels happy after a long sleep, and advised her to wake up earlier more often. A small child also excitedly greeted Wakaba good morning. It was her twin sister, Asahina Futaba, full of excitement. They jumped around happily, exclaiming that the weather was beautiful today. The little girl was delighted to see the sunlight streaming through the window. Wakaba, sharing her sister's excitement, happily agreed that it was refreshing to see the weather change after a week of continuous rain. However, their father frowned and grumbled that he didn't like the rain. It sent shivers down his spine. Futaba burst out laughing at her father's exaggerated expression, but she was quickly reminded by her mother to eat breakfast quickly, or she would be late for school. Wakaba nodded, saying she couldn't stand being late. Curious, she asked her father what he had bought yesterday. Excited, he revealed that it was something he had been waiting for a long time. Wakaba teased that it must be a Mandam model, calling him a nostalgic person. Annoyed, he quickly corrected her. It's Bandam, not Mandam, and reminded her that he had explained this countless times. Futaba joked that the two words sounded the same, but her father dismissed it, lamenting that no one understood the grandeur of a man's dream. Wakaba immediately praised his model, which instantly lifted his spirits. He happily promised to give her a secret red jacket next time. Wakaba smiled warmly, saying that she would never refuse such a gift. But then, the ticking of the clock brought them back to reality. They were late. Hastily putting on their shoes, the two sisters rushed out the door. A radiant smile lit up his face. At the train station, Futaba waved goodbye. Her smile lit up as she expressed how much she cherished the moments she spent with her sister. But as Wakaba continued alone, a heavy feeling gradually crept over her. The fleeting joy faded, and she knew that what awaited her would not be easy. Then Wakaba sat silently in his chair, his eyes heavy with sadness. Nearby, she overheard a conversation between two classmates, one asking if the other had seen the message from last night. The other person apologized, saying she had fallen asleep, then joked that she might make him go to karaoke as punishment. As the conversation shifted, they noticed Wakaba and began teasing her, sarcastically remarking that she always pretended to be a diligent student and that her only friends were her books. Just then, Nanase Ikumi, one of her classmates, stepped forward, expressing her frustration at their cruel treatment of Wakaba. But Wakaba remained unaffected, merely sighing softly and admitting that she couldn't stand Shoji either. Shuji smiled faintly, remarking that Nanase was indeed a special person, unlike Asahina. Shuji turned to ask Torimaki for her opinion, and she nodded, calmly saying that they were just helping Wakaba. He remarked that Wakaba was an immoral girl who found pleasure in her own suffering. With her head bowed, Wakaba pondered it all, wondering why things had turned out this way. Her only mistake was wanting a normal school life. Communicating with others has always been a big challenge, making it difficult for her to make friends. She had hoped things would be better when she entered high school, but nothing went according to plan. She blamed herself for everything, feeling only criticism and rejection for the past 6 months. Hiding her wounds deep inside, Wakaba wondered if she had ever thought that high school life would be fun. But she was wrong. She never wanted any of these things. Suddenly, Nanase slammed her hand on the table, her voice sharp and cold as she gave the order. She demanded that Asahina stop ignoring her. Asahina looked straight at her and replied in a cold voice, "Ask why." Nanis, feeling pressured and angry, yelled at Wakaba, asking if she couldn't do anything about her constant behavior instead of defending herself. Wakaba silently apologized. Nanis looked at her with a distant and pessimistic expression. He grabbed her hair, his voice sharp and cold as he warned her not to be arrogant just because of her appearance. She pulled Wakaba's hair as she spoke. When the break time bell rang, the teacher left the classroom, and Wakaba quietly left the classroom. With her lunchbox, she looked for a quiet corner to eat. When she found one, Wakaba sat down, only to discover the food had gone cold. She sighed, thinking it was better than it spoiling. But her eyes lit up when she noticed a beautifully presented meal, which offered a rare sense of comfort. In these moments, she felt closest to her family. Though deep down, she wished she didn't have to go to school, but she knew that sharing this with her parents would only worry them. And she didn't want to see them upset. Determined to remain silent, she told herself she just needed to persevere for another year, knowing that her class would soon change. While eating, Wakaba heard a loud noise that startled her. The voices seemed to echo from behind the bushes, where an angry boy called the other a despicable person, challenging him to repeat the words. The second son retorted, saying that the first son didn't realize the true value of Galji and had started mocking his name. Bizen Ryoichi appeared angry, asserting that the other person was only pretending and calling him an idiot. The other person countered, saying that he simply meant to say that girls look beautiful without glasses. But if Ryoichi took off his glasses, he looked really scary. Ryoichi's anger flared up and he started fighting. This left Wakaba confused, not understanding why they were arguing like that. Amidst the chaos, another person, Nakagawa Shun, appeared, urging them to stop. He advised Ryoichi to refrain from overreacting and warned Haruto against starting another fight for no reason. Ryoichi was angry because Haruto had insulted him. Wakaba recognized all three sons. She recognized Nakagawa-kun, the top student in the class, who consistently scored high on exams, including national ones. His achievements had reached such a high level that it seemed only he could elevate the school's reputation. Ryoichi, known for his impressive physical strength, earned a regular place on the soccer team. His wealth was evident. He even had a personal servant. Both of them were very popular at school. At this point, Ryoichi declared he would teach Haruto about the true nature of eroge. The chubby boy clutched his stomach and asked Ryoichi if he was talking about brain muscles, then called him a spoiled brat. The chubby boy was revealed to be Iruma Haruto, who, with a wide, cheerful smile, declared he would prove his belly wasn't just for show. Wakaba explained that Haruto was often called ugly, fat, and dirty during the opening ceremony. He was so upset about a failed game that he was dragged outside. With his distinctive appearance, Haruto received countless nicknames from others. Ryoichi tells Haruto that all games promote health and wonders about the purpose of living such a shallow and foolish life. Haruto retorted, saying that every game has its own silliness but is also a great source of fun. Ryoichi realized Haruto was just spouting nonsense, living in a 2D fantasy world, oblivious to 3D reality. Even though he knew everyone hated him, Haruto remained nonchalant, leaving Wakaba bewildered by his carefree attitude. Looking at her lunchbox, she thought to herself that since entering this school, she had never truly smiled from the heart. Haruto's carefree attitude surprised her. She finished her meal quickly and left quietly. Nanis was chatting with friends, feeling bored and wondering, why do people find this monotony so peaceful? She felt relieved because the test was approaching. Hopefully something interesting will happen. It's like someone falling dramatically. Suddenly she heard a scream that died down, a hateful person. She was confused, not understanding what was happening. That sound was from an argument between Ryoichi and Haruto. Ryoichi was trying to restrain Haruto, who was angry and accusing Ryoichi of flirting with every girl. Nanis felt confused, not understanding why they always ended up arguing every morning at the school gate. Ryoichi, annoyed, told Haruto to stop repeating those meaningless words. Ryoichi's maid appeared with a special lunchbox filled with his favorite food. The mention of Karage brought a satisfied smile to Ryoichi's face. Haruto witnessed this scene and became jealous, unable to control his emotions. He started crying, shouting that it was an unjust society if someone didn't get a lunchbox filled with love. He yelled, saying that the Japanese government should do something about this issue. Ryoichi explained that his maid was like family, like an older sister or mother. When she pouted, Ryoichi asked her why. Nakagawa comforted Haruto, telling him not to worry about Ryoichi because he was just a little crazy. Haruto wiped away his tears and took a comic book out of his bag, saying that his dream of a perfect 3D world would never come true, and that he could only marry a 2D girl, of which there were thousands. Shuji felt frustrated, telling her friends about the constant arguments that started every morning and how she couldn't stand it anymore. She believed that Haruto had become a burden to the school and that his arrogance was only growing. Ever since becoming friends with Ryoichi, Nanase has started thinking about it, and Shuji asked her what she was thinking. An idea popped into Nanase's head. She decided to use Wakaba for her own purposes. The aim is to destroy 2 targets with a single stone. Meanwhile, Wakaba sat quietly in the classroom. When a sudden noise outside caught her attention, Wakaba, curious, stepped outside, and they saw Nanase surrounded by a group of girls, all admiring an attractive item in her hand. The item was so beautiful that even Wakaba was captivated by it. But she quickly stepped back, telling herself she had no reason to stay. To her surprise, Nanase gestured for her to come closer and, in an unusually gentle tone, promised to show her the ornament privately. Wakaba hesitated, doubting those words. That kind of kindness was unlike her. But then Nanase gently encouraged her once more. Wakaba began to wonder what had changed. She hurried closer to examine the ornament in Nanase's hand. When shown it, she admired it deeply and asked if it was a pocket mirror. Holding it carefully in her hand, she was captivated by its beauty. But suddenly she felt a strong jolt. The mirror slipped from her hand, fell to the ground, and shattered. Nanase shrieked in disbelief, demanding to know what Wakaba had done. Wakaba panicked and anxiously insisted it wasn't her fault. Someone had pushed her from behind. Nanase began feigning tears, claiming the mirror was an expensive birthday gift and mockingly asking if Wakaba could afford to pay for it. Feeling ashamed and guilty, Wakaba repeatedly apologized. Nanase saw that she was both embarrassed and pitiful. She looked at Wakaba as a poor and insignificant girl. She said she knew Wakaba didn't intentionally break the mirror and would forgive her. Wakaba felt relieved and grateful. But then Nanase added another condition. Wakaba bowed her head in a submissive manner, saying she was willing to do whatever Nanase asked. Nanase, trying to trick Wakaba, smiled mischievously and suggested playing a penalty game. With a mischievous grin, she told Wakaba to confess her feelings to Haruto and invite him to hang out with me. She added with a teasing smile that Wakaba should become Haruto's girlfriend. Wakaba was completely stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. She bowed her head, tears welling up in her eyes, and sank into deep thought, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. Seeing her hesitation, Nanase jokingly asked if she knew Haruto from first grade. Wakaba trembled and nodded hesitantly. He's a disgusting fat guy, a silly and strange fellow, always saying unpleasant things. Shuji from Nanase's group of friends expressed his frustration with Haruto, calling his personality annoying and unbearable. She added that they had decided to teach him a lesson, and now it's time to play a game with him. Wakaba, confused, asked why she had to confess her feelings. Nanase scoffed, saying she was as naive as she appeared. She went on to describe Haruto as a quirky, goofy guy who had never had a girlfriend. Noticing Wakaba's confused expression, Nanase pointed to her beautiful face and asked if she knew what would happen if she expressed her feelings. With a mischievous grin, Nanase said that he would follow her around like a monkey. Shuji proposed a plan that would work once they got closer and their relationship deepened. Haruto will start thinking highly of Wakaba, and then they'll reveal that it was just a joke. When Haruto keeps following her around like a cockroach, he'll eventually understand his place. Shuji excitedly said that this plan would ensure they could live out the rest of their school years in peace. They just wanted to teach him a lesson about his worth. Upon hearing this, Wakaba was stunned, as if she were refusing to participate in their plan. Nanase picked up the broken mirror and said that Wakaba was acting as if she had a choice. She threatened to complain to Wakaba's parents, showing them the broken mirror. Let me reiterate that Wakaba promised to do whatever it takes. They all laughed when Wakaba realized everything had been planned, and they had been deceiving her all along. Feeling foolish, Wakaba wondered why it took her so long to realize things. She didn't want to be part of the plan or lie to Haruto. She wished she could freely choose who she wanted to be with. And when should you express your feelings? However, this situation forced her to be near the most hated person in school. If Wakaba refused, they would bully her even more. And she might have to pay more than 10,000 yen for the broken mirror. Nanase began trying to make herself attractive to Haruto's potential girlfriends. Wakaba, lost in thought, sat silently with his head bowed. Nanase scoffed and reminded her that this was 4th grade. Tormaki told her that her sweet boyfriend had arrived. When Haruto entered, he cheerfully greeted them, saluting them and proudly announcing that he had come to serve them all. From 1st grade, he asked everyone in 4th grade where Asahina-san was. "Because I heard she wanted to talk to you." Just then his gaze fell upon Wakaba, and a voice interrupted, saying they should be fighting right now. Just then, Ryuichi walked into the 4th grade classroom, declaring that today he would end this battle once and for all. Haruto told him to stop talking nonsense, reminding him that he could also wait in their class. Angrily, Ryuichi retorted that he never left things unresolved and would make a final decision today. Haruto laughed heartily, slapped his thigh, and remarked that Ryuichi never missed an opportunity to make him laugh. Ryuichi and Haruto started fighting, while Wakaba stood nearby trembling. Nanase pulled Shuji forward. She asked Ryuichi what he was doing there. She said that some girls liked Ryuichi, and they needed to make sure he didn't find out about their plan beforehand. Shuji was afraid of Ryuichi because she knew he was wild and wouldn't listen to her. Shuji quickly pushed Wakaba forward. He shoved Wakaba right towards Haruto, completely confusing him. He asked if she was really Wakaba Asahina and if she wanted to talk to him. Wakaba responded with a nod, feeling nervous. Just then, Nanase stepped forward and told Haruto that Wakaba liked him very much. Haruto seemed unconcerned, as if this matter didn't matter to him. And I think this performance deserves a 4 out of 10. Nanas was angry, insisting that she was telling the truth and demanding that Wakaba confirm it. Wakaba bowed his head and silently agreed. Haruto, unable to believe his eyes, knelt down. Ian started screaming like a madwoman, asking if this was real. He couldn't believe this was happening because he'd never expected anything like this in his life. It felt like a scene from a bad teen movie. The shock left Haruto exhausted, as if he were about to faint. Wakaba tried to say something but couldn't utter a word. Her head bowed. Haruto, utterly disbelieving, started shouting again. Wakaba stood there, dryly thinking that now she would have to become his girlfriend. And it wasn't too late to tell him that this was just a joke, but at that moment she remembered Nanase's threat and lost all courage to defend themselves. She realized there was no way out of this situation. She couldn't stop trembling, nor could she run away. Wakaba had to confess her feelings for him and beg him to go on a date with her. After saying all this, Wakaba felt a little uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Haruto seemed frozen in shock, as if he were completely paralyzed by what he had just heard. Ryuichi waved his hand in front of Haruto, trying to find out what was wrong with him. At this point, Ryuichi began advising Wakaba to forget about Haruto. He explained that he was a strange guy, uninterested in real girls in the 3D world, and only obsessed with his 2D wife. Ryuichi added that even he was surprised by Haruto's obsessive devotion, and suggested that Wakaba would be better off forgetting about him forever. Just then, Haruto slapped Ryuichi in the face and declared that he was completely ready to leave. He dramatically pleaded in front of Asahina-san, begging that if she truly wanted him, he would definitely go on a date with her. Haruto joyfully welcomed spring, proud that he had never given Wakaba false hope, and called out his father's name. Declare victory. Ryuichi reminded him of his vow to the 2D goddess, but Haruto laughed and denied it. Annoyed, Ryuichi punched him, but Haruto didn't react. Continuing to search for love in Wakaba's eyes, Haruto awkwardly asked Wakaba if she would really be with him. Not sure what she meant, he then asked if they were boyfriend and girlfriend. She responded with a slight nod. This made Haruto's eyes fill with tears of happiness. Overwhelmed, he happily declared that if this was a dream, he wants to live in this dream forever. Haruto thanked her sincerely. Wakaba's eyes were also filled with tears as she wanted to apologize. But then she bowed her head and congratulated him on his new relationship. Nanas clapped happily, saying that the two looked great together. Wakaba hid his emotions. He simply replied, "Thank you." Haruto asked Nanase if she was a friend of Asahina. Nanas quickly confirmed it, even urging Wakaba to confirm it as well. Wakaba confirmed, and Haruto apologized for asking those strange questions earlier. Just then, Ryuichi called Haruto, saying that if their conversation was over, they should come back. Ryuichi, angry, said that her right leg had been bothering her all day and was telling her to do something to Haruto. Haruto told Ryuichi to go back to class because her classmates were waiting. Haruto told Wakaba that his friends were waiting, so he had to leave. But then, feeling shy, he asked if she'd like to walk home with him after school, as he wanted to introduce her to his friends. Wakaba pretended to be happy and agreed to go with Haruto. As they said goodbye, Wakaba watched Haruto leave. The moment he disappeared from sight, she collapsed, a feeling of unease overwhelming her, as if a storm of emotions was swirling within her. Nana started laughing and teasing Wakaba, joking that she had actually confessed her feelings to that chubby guy. His classmates also joined in teasing Wakaba for accomplishing it and making the chubby boy cry with joy. Nanase continued to tease him. He said that Wakaba would be his girlfriend until the game ended. She also realized that Haruto would forever remain a single man, and hinted that Torimaki might be able to help him. Everyone burst out laughing. Looking at Wakaba's situation, they commented that Wakaba looked like a depressed girl, while Haruto was a chubby, unremarkable boy. They joked that the couple was adorable. Wakaba realized she had just told a big lie, a lie she would only regret. After school, she met Haruto's friends and noticed his happiness after she confessed her feelings. She couldn't stop worrying about what would happen when Haruto found out it was just a joke. Haruto introduced her to his friends, Nakagawa, his childhood friend, and Ryuichi, his companion since junior high school. Nakagawa greeted Wakaba warmly and encouraged her to call him by his name informally, while Ryuichi jokingly said he would protect her. Wakaba responded politely, expressing his pleasure at meeting them. Upon hearing the name Wakaba, Haruto complimented it, saying it was as beautiful as her appearance. Nakagawa was surprised, realizing that Haruto didn't even know her name until now. Ryoichi teased Haruto, saying that he hadn't noticed Wakaba until he met her in class, but that was okay. Nakagawa congratulated Haruto, believing that they would grow closer over time. Ryoichi patted Nakagawa on the shoulder, wishing him good luck and acknowledging Haruto's success. Moved, Haruto thanked his friends with tears in his eyes. Ryoichi said that the introductions were over and they should leave now. Nakagawa agreed, suggesting that the two of them should spend some private time together. When Haruto asked, Ryoichi said that he had a soccer practice session and Nakagawa had something to do. They both left, with Haruto waving goodbye and saying they would see each other again tomorrow. Haruto's friends left, commenting that he looked really cute next to Wakaba. Haruto shyly replied that their friendship was very special, and it was great being able to talk freely about anything. Wakaba looked confused. Haruto then suggested they go home, and Wakaba agreed. She walked home in silence, when suddenly she saw Nanase standing in front of the school building. His eyes stared intently at her. Memories of their previous conversation flooded back, especially since Nanase congratulated her on having a boyfriend, and explained that now they had to be together as a couple. It felt like a new responsibility for Wakaba. Seeing her anxiety, Haruto asked if anything was wrong, but she simply replied, "Nothing." They continued walking in silence on their way home. Haruto seemed very worried, constantly trying to maintain a conversation with Wakaba. He asked about her hobbies, the TV shows she watched, and her family, trying to keep the conversation flowing. However, Wakaba could only give short and strange answers. She began to feel that Haruto might think she was a shy and boring girl. Haruto asked if Wakaba's house was nearby, and she replied that her house was only a short distance away and she would be going home alone from there. Haruto agreed with a touch of sadness. Wakaba reflected on the day, thinking that the task was complete and it would soon be over. As Nanase said, it was just an exercise. As Haruto prepared to say goodbye, he mentioned they would meet at school tomorrow. When she remained silent, he gently asked if anything was wrong. After a moment of hesitation, Wakaba cautiously asked if he was free on Saturday. Haruto hesitated, his eyes filled with uncertainty, before answering in a low voice that he wasn't sure. Wakaba mustered her courage, took a deep breath, and asked him, her voice trembling slightly, would he like to go on a date with her? When the date day arrived, Wakaba dressed up and walked to the meeting place with a sense of nervousness. She thought to herself that this was the first time in her life she was going on a date with a guy. She knew that these moments were always special in everyone's life, but for her, today was also a bitter reality. A day that would be remembered, but not in the way she had hoped. She checked the weather forecast, saw that it was cloudy, and secretly hoped it would rain so the date would be cancelled. The terrifying memory of confessing her feelings to Haruto suddenly flooded back. She still couldn't believe she was actually going on a date with him. Feeling dejected, she cursed her life and looked at the clock. Only 15 minutes left. At that moment, Haruto was standing trembling in the park. He was nervous because it was his first date. Not long after, Wakaba appeared. Overwhelmed with tension, Haruto waved his hands repeatedly to signal. Wakaba tried to calm herself down, forcing herself to appear cheerful. He forced a strained smile and asked, "Did I keep you waiting long?" Haruto still waved goodbye. Reassure them that everything will be all right, and they still have time. He shyly said that the date had finally arrived. Wakaba wore a puzzled expression, responding awkwardly that it was fine. The two began walking together. But Wakaba acted cold and annoyed even though Haruto tried to strike up a conversation. She pretended to be cheerful, hiding her awkwardness. Haruto remarked that it was ironic that the weather was so gloomy today, but still optimistically said, "They will have a good time." Wakaba sighed and reluctantly agreed. They then proceeded into the movie theater, which was packed with people and had long lines of people waiting. While weaving through the crowd, Haruto asked Wakaba what movie she wanted to see, and suggested a romantic film instead of a horror or action movie. Wakaba saw a poster on the wall and suggested the latest trending movie, White Lily's film. Haruto nodded in agreement and said he would go buy the tickets right away. Before leaving, he reassured Wakaba not to worry. He'll be back soon. Tell her to just wait patiently. Standing there alone, Wakaba was stunned. She suddenly realized that, apart from her family, it had been a long time since anyone had treated her so kindly. She wondered when the last time anyone had cared about her so much was. Haruto and Wakaba sat next to each other when the movie started. But then a trailer appeared. Wakaba suddenly remembered Futaba, who always complained that people go to the cinema to watch movies, not to watch commercials. Thinking of Futaba's impatience, Wakaba chuckled, realizing how much joy it had once brought her. She suddenly realized she had been so engrossed in the movie that if she hadn't paid attention to the person next to her, she might have forgotten that this was a date. It had been a long time since she'd been to the cinema, so Wakaba decided to fully enjoy the experience, immersing herself in every frame. As the story became more captivating, Wakaba immersed himself in each scene with enjoyment and a touch of satisfaction. At that moment, Haruto, sensing an opportunity, gently placed his hand on Wakaba's hand. A shock ran through her, and in a reflexive reaction, she instinctively pulled her hand back, letting out a soft, surprised gasp. The atmosphere around them suddenly became awkward as a few people nearby noticed the embarrassing moment between them. Wakaba's face flushed red with embarrassment. She mumbled an apology. Haruto was equally flustered, hastily taking the blame and admitting that he had gone too far. But it was the fleeting hurt in his voice that made Wakaba wonder. Was this moment as normal for Haruto as it made her feel suffocated? Still gently holding Haruto's hand, Wakaba spoke up anxiously, saying that since they were a couple now, things like this were bound to happen sooner or later. She bowed her head, profusely apologizing for her earlier reaction. Haruto panicked, covering his face and trembling all over, repeatedly saying that it was all his fault. Just then, the movie ended, and the audience began leaving the theater. They both quietly walked outside. As they were walking, Haruto suddenly stopped, bowed his head to Wakaba, his voice filled with remorse. He confessed that he was too embarrassed to look up and sincerely apologize to her once again. Haruto admitted that he had absolutely no experience in romantic relationships. This was also his first date, so he acted a little hastily. Wakaba looked at him, gently reassuring him that there was no need to keep apologizing for such a small thing, then smiled at him. Haruto asked how they could make it up to Wakaba, suggesting they still had time before lunch and could go shopping. Wakaba agreed, and while Haruto was looking for a suitable shop, she noticed a shop right behind him. But before she could say anything, Haruto's attention had shifted to the arcade. He excitedly suggested spending some time there, pulling Wakaba along before she could even react. Inside, the atmosphere was lively with cheers and the sounds of video games echoing everywhere. Haruto was captivated by the vibrant scenery. I realized that many new games have just been added. He turned to Wakaba and asked which game she wanted to try first. Wakaba hesitated slightly, saying that she had never been to places like this before, and therefore knew nothing. Haruto smiled brightly and confidently declared, "Then today, a young and inexperienced Haruto will guide you into the world of gaming." Haruto took money from the machine and exchanged it for game tokens. Seeing this, Wakaba offered to pay instead of him. However, Haruto gently refused, reminding her that she had already paid for the food and drinks earlier, so it was only fair. He was genuinely happy to see Wakaba caring about him so sincerely. Holding the coins in his hand, Haruto asked Wakaba which game he wanted to play first. He explained that the UFO catcher claw machine was the easiest, but unfortunately it was faulty and cost more than its actual value. Then, unexpectedly, he asked Wakaba if she liked quiz shows on TV. Seeing her nod in curiosity, Haruto pointed to a game and excitedly suggested, "Then let's try this one." Wakaba hesitated for a moment, but Haruto, noticing her uncertainty, encouraged her. "This is a fun way to test your knowledge." He enthusiastically chose a topic and pressed the start button for the game. Gradually, Wakaba answered each question. Her confidence grew as she progressed to the final round. They both stared intently at the screen, the tension evident. Haruto, with excitement and pride, confessed that this was the first time he had made it to the final round of a quiz game, and didn't forget to cheer Wakaba on to keep winning. Wakaba, recalling childhood days of playing games but never finishing them, felt a mixture of determination and anxiety when the final question appeared in English. She hesitated for a moment, uncertain, her heart racing as she braced herself. The question appeared on the screen. They should stop smoking. Wakaba's heart raced as she struggled with the difficult English expression. Her anxiety increased with each passing second. As the clock ticked down, she took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Her eyes scanned the 3 options on the screen, and the second one caught her attention. It seems to fit the question's content, although it's somewhat unusual compared to the other options. She had a gut feeling that it might be true, but doubt still haunted her, and she felt a wave of unease. She couldn't help but reflect on her constant struggle with hesitation, a habit that always held her back. With only a short time left, Wakaba felt overwhelmed and admitted that the word book has many meanings. She closed her eyes and almost gave up, saying she couldn't do it. Haruto comforted her, explaining that a book could be a contract or a register, and pointing out that dictionaries provide many words with meanings that can completely change the context. Smiling at her, he encouraged her to consider that the answer might be a different choice from the others. Haruto explained that giving up wasn't a good option and encouraged her to answer the question. His words resonated deeply within Wakaba. She began to connect the meanings of the words, reflecting on how she had overcome challenges and difficulties in the past. She clenched her fists, realizing that the second option was the correct answer, and confidently chose it. Even after seeing the correct answer, she was still astonished. Haruto congratulated her. Praised her for getting a high score and winning the game. Wakaba, still in shock, suddenly stopped, then clapped along with Haruto, bursting with excitement and cheering. She realized she had actually done it. Although she knew it was just a game, the victory brought her a profound sense of satisfaction and joy. After a while, she felt genuinely excited and proud of herself, and her happiness was indescribable. She enthusiastically acknowledged Haruto for helping her answer the last question correctly. Haruto humbly admitted that his English had always been good since childhood, even though he was terrible at other subjects. Wakaba jokingly told him not to be so modest. Haruto asked Wakaba if she wanted to play another game. Normally, she would refuse without much thought, but this time she accepted without hesitation. Together, they played some games, and Wakaba experienced a special joy she had never felt before, a rare and extraordinary feeling of happiness. Looking at their watches, they realized it was lunchtime. Haruto suggested going to a restaurant he knew, famous for its delicious food, and asked if she wanted to go. At this point, lunch had completely passed from Wakaba's mind. Therefore, she didn't reply immediately. Haruto reassured her that if she wasn't hungry, they could skip lunch. Wakaba began rummaging through her bag and pulled out a bento box, handing it to Haruto. He was surprised by the food and asked in astonishment if it was homemade. Wakaba nodded, curiously asking why he was so interested. Haruto stared intently at the lunchbox. This made Wakaba flinch, feeling a little embarrassed. She explained that she hadn't mentioned the bento earlier because she thought Haruto already had plans for the date, including making a reservation at a restaurant. Haruto was overwhelmed with emotion. He started shouting loudly, startling Wakaba and leaving him gasping for breath. Haruto exclaimed that he had finally been rewarded with a homemade lunchbox. A magnificent treasure comparable to the most powerful legendary suits of armor was appearing right before his eyes. He made the announcement dramatically and emotionally, then burst into tears, prompting Wakaba to quickly try to calm him down. While watching him cry, Wakaba suddenly realized she was observing him closely. Despite the slight chaos, she found that everything felt very natural when she was near Haruto, and looking at him didn't bring any feeling of boredom. On the contrary, it only brought them closer together. When they found a seat, Haruto asked if they could sit down and eat there. Wakaba replied that they could enjoy their meal peacefully as long as no one else came, and also mentioned that finding this spot wasn't easy. They began eating their bento boxes, and Wakaba observed Haruto, who was clearly enjoying his meal. The reason behind the lunchbox gradually became clear. Wakaba brought it because Nanase had advised her to bring a homemade lunchbox on their first date. Haruto excitedly praised the delicious bento box, saying he could easily eat 3 bowls of rice just because of the tamagoyaki. Hearing this, Wakaba felt happy, and for a moment wondered if he was so happy because she had done it for him, although she quickly dismissed the thought as silly. While eating, she couldn't stop looking at him. Wakaba found Haruto to be an interesting person. His emotions were obvious, whether happy or sad. He never pretended to be happy. If someone knew him, they would realize he was far different from the rumors. She used to think Haruto only talked about games and manga, but the reality was different. Haruto always cared about her, while Wakaba, despite her social awkwardness, was surprisingly able to converse with him comfortably. She could hardly believe that she had once been unwilling to talk to the kind of person he was. During the meal, Haruto apologized for finishing his bento, saying it was irresistible. Wakaba reassured him that it was okay. Haruto complimented Wakaba's cooking and asked if she often cooked at home. Wakaba shared that she often helps her mother in the kitchen, unlike her twin sister. He's a terrible cook, but very skillful with his hands. Despite being twins, their habits and abilities were completely different. Haruto was surprised and asked if she had a younger sister, implying that her family consisted of 4 people. Wakaba happily confirmed and proudly spoke about her younger sister, who always has ice cream in her hand. She said that her younger sister is a talented presenter, very relaxed and completely different. She admires her sister's impressive athletic abilities and considers her a good sister who always cares for her older sister. Sometimes Wakaba felt jealous of her younger sister because of the striking differences between them. Then she spoke of her kind and generous mother, who could frighten someone when her anger got out of control, and about the father, the only man in the house with strange hobbies but a very high sense of responsibility. Haruto inquired about her father's unusual hobby, and Wakaba explained that he collected bandam figurines, a type of model made from plastic. Haruto eagerly shared his passion with bandams, calling the M91 a high-quality robot. When he asked Wakaba if she liked her father's work, she revealed that not only she, but also her mother and sister, greatly admired what her family did for each other. Family has always come first to her, and she's always happy to talk about them. The conversation showed Wakaba and Haruto becoming increasingly comfortable with each other, with Haruto responding politely and warmly, nodding and smiling but never crossing the line. She asked about Haruto's family, and he shared that his father was a high school teacher. From a young age, his father focused on ensuring Haruto received a proper upbringing. Despite this, his father had a humorous personality and often told strange jokes. However, Haruto worries whenever his father drinks beer and becomes overly emotional, which makes him feel anxious. Haruto pointed towards Wakaba, indicating that his mother was completely different from his father. Essentially, his mother was an exceptional woman who hated losing. There was a big sale at the supermarket recently, and she was the first to arrive. Despite the cold, no matter how cold it gets, she always goes to the market at 4 a.m. Haruto tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. Even his older sister Mifuyu often went to the market with their mother. When Wakaba asked about her, Haruto shared that Mifuyu is only 14 years old. Haruto went on to explain that his older sister didn't resemble him in appearance, but she was incredibly beautiful and intelligent. People often said she possessed both beauty and wisdom. He also revealed that he suspected Namikawa was in love with her and texted her whenever he had the time. Wakaba was very surprised to hear this. Haruto added that his older sister could be very cruel. She knew Namikawa loved her and deliberately used him for her own amusement. Wakaba found Haruto's family quite interesting. Every moment in life is beautiful, and Haruto wants to live each moment to the fullest. Wakaba smiled happily, but after a while, Haruto fell silent, bowed his head, and told Wakaba that he had something to say. When Wakaba asked him what he wanted to say, Haruto began to tremble, trying to muster his courage. Sweat dripped down his face and he clenched his fists. Without thinking too much, he hastily asked her what she liked about him. The question shocked Wakaba. She didn't answer and became tense. Haruto quickly apologized, saying he shouldn't have asked and begging her not to be upset. To cheer her up, he explained that he was just curious. Suddenly, a boy ran up, pointed at Haruto, and loudly compared him to a pig. A short while later, an adult rushed in, clearly flustered, and began apologizing, explaining that the boy was being disciplined for his behavior. However, Haruto quickly intervened, reassuring the adults that it was nothing to worry about, and bent down to talk directly to the boy, curious about his interests. Haruto asked the boy if he liked pigs. The boy's face lit up with excitement as he began to talk about his love for pigs, not only because of their cheerful sounds, but also because pork dishes tasted delicious. Haruto chuckled, jokingly adding that pork was indeed delicious. The boy, now feeling a connection, decided to give Haruto a mischievous nickname and asked him to tell him his real name. After learning his name, the boy repeated it with a bright smile, clearly enjoying the conversation. The adults, noticing the time had passed, gently pulled the boy away, reminding him of their next plan, but not forgetting to wave goodbye to Haruto with renewed admiration. Haruto stood smiling as he watched them leave, then glanced at Wakaba. She seemed amused but remained silent, her expression softening after the conversation. Having learned this, they began to talk. The man noticed the silent tension between the two. He apologized to Wakaba, then curiously asked if they were dating. She gently replied with a yes. The man, in a hurry, called Taichi and reminded him that the movie was about to start. Taichi, who had always been following Haruto, he announced that he was going to see a movie about penguins. Haruto, curious, said that he had heard a lot about this anime, and I heard the film received quite positive reviews. With excitement, Taichi revealed that he had heard the movie featured many gods, which made Haruto pause and think. Then he asked again, "Do you mean 8 million gods?" Taichi, his eyes wide, nodded in agreement with Haruto, then laughed and explained that, simply put, it was a metaphorical way of referring to everything in nature, from fire and rain to even toilets. Haruto showing no sign of embarrassment, the detailed explanation fascinated Taichi, leaving him speechless at the interesting cultural information. Just then, Taichi's father called him, gently pulling him away. Taichi quickly followed his father, and Haruto watched them go. I wondered if I should continue with lunch. After finishing their meal, they started to walk back. Wakaba was lost in thought, and Haruto, noticing her silence, spoke up, remarking that the child was indeed very cute. Wakaba agreed, adding that Haruto seemed to know a great deal about random things, especially about the 8 million gods, since he spoke about it without hesitation. Haruto explained that he has a passion for collecting random information, often reading it from various news sources. He also mentioned the movie the child wanted to see, saying it was a bit sad because it reflected how, when someone is forgotten by everyone, they become like faded, insignificant gods, gradually disappearing into obscurity. Wakaba pondered, remaining silent for a moment, feeling that no one would notice if he disappeared, and a wave of sadness washed over him. Haruto suddenly stopped and said that there are things in the world that cannot be seen with the naked eye. These things are often not outwardly apparent, but he believes they are always with us, protecting us. Wakaba asked if he was talking about gods or fairies. Haruto quickly changed the subject. It refers to a Western legend about the souls of the dead becoming fairies. Invisible and unheard by most people, except for a few special individuals. Haruto explained that these fairies are completely different from Japanese ghosts. With a mischievous smile, he asked Wakaba if she believed him talking to them. Haruto teased Wakaba, saying that the fairies had described her as an innocent girl. Before they met, it surprised and confused her, but she relaxed when he laughed and admitted that he was just joking. Wakaba scolded him for the lie, but her mood gradually lightened. Wakaba scolded him for the lie, but her mood gradually improved. Haruto explained that he had noticed she seemed sad earlier and wanted to cheer her up. He takes responsibility for any awkwardness at the movie theater, and when he saw that her mood had improved, he reassured her that there was no need to worry anymore. Wakaba placed her hand over her heart, feeling an unexpected sense of peace and realizing that she had truly enjoyed this date. It felt like a significant moment, confirming her decision to come here. Her phone suddenly vibrated with a message from Nanis, reminding her about her assignment and requesting a photo. The reminder changed her mood, but she asked Haruto for help. He readily agreed, though with a touch of nervousness. She posed confidently, masking her emotions with a forced smile. After the photo shoot was over, she thanked him, though her sadness was still undeniable. When Wakaba seemed sad again, Haruto noticed this and gently asked her if she was all right. Wakaba replied that she was fine, although her expression betrayed otherwise. With a gentle gesture, Haruto pointed to a bench, suggesting she rest for a while and assuring her that she didn't need to feel bothered. Since he's here often, he asked permission from the manager, and informed Wakaba that they can sit there. He also offered her a cup of tea. When Wakaba opened the bottle of tea, her mind returned to Haruto's earlier question about what she liked. At that moment, she quietly realized that she no longer felt uncomfortable with Haruto's presence. Wakaba began to recall the events at the movie theater and, with a genuine feeling, admitted that Haruto was a kind person.